Alright, for this video I wanted to go over the 2022 version of the Form 5695 for residential energy tax credits. So the form is separated into two parts. Alright, so the first part is the residential clean energy credit, and then the second part is the energy efficient home improvement credit, and this is the one that we're going to focus on for this video. I'll do some other videos. Check out the playlist below for some of these other tax credits and other kind of unique situations. But for purposes of this one, I want to just do an intro to the credit itself and then cover the part two of the form. So I've got one slide in front of us with some just really good basic background information on these credits, and then of course the sample return as well for 2022 and 2021 for John taxpayer. So what are some of the basics here, right? Again, when we talk about the residential energy tax credits, there's really two separate buckets. Okay, so we have part one is the clean energy credit. This guidance is found in Internal Revenue Code section 25D, and then part two, the one we'll focus on here, are those energy efficient home improvements, and we can find these in section 25 cap C. So when we think of the clean energy credits, we're thinking of items or property that's being installed that's actually generating the energy, right? The clean energy. So our solar panels, fuel cell, wind turbines, those kind of items. When we talk about energy efficient home improvements, we're not necessarily talking about things that actually kind of create the power. It's improvements to your home that just improve the overall energy efficiency of the structure, right? So we think of upgrades like new insulation, getting energy efficient doors, roofing, windows, skylights, all that kind of stuff. And so that's what we're going to focus on for this video. Now, the reason why 2022 is significant is because a lot of these credits were actually set to expire, right? So the Section 25C section, that entire credit section, was actually going to expire at the end of 2021, but the IRA extended it not only through the end of 2022, but going forward basically another decade too. But what's unique about 2022 is even though there's all these changes that have gone into effect for 2023 and going forward, the 2022 credit, which is what we're going to look at here, basically keeps the old rules. So for example, the 25C credit, we're limited to 10% of the cost of the improvements, and there's this lifetime limitation of $500. That applies for 2022, but in 2023 going forward it changes. So the IRA increased the credit amount to 30% of the cost of those improvements, and now the cap is $1,200 per year, but it's not a lifetime credit. So in other words, every single year you can get up to $1,200 of credits if you make new installations every single year. For 2022 and prior, we had this lifetime limit of $500, and so taxpayers have to track how much they use every year. And once they hit 500, then that's the end of it. And so what I'll show you with our example is John was claiming some of the credits in prior years, and when he does his 2022 return, he has to factor that in there. Okay, so let's have a look at our fact pattern here. I'm going to run through the whole fact pattern first, and then we will go look at the actual forms, and so we can see how these should have been completed. So during 2021, so we're talking about last year, John hired a company to install some loose fill cellulose insulation in his attic, right? And this is his principal residence we're looking at here. Now, the total fee to get this thing up and running and install was $2,000. So on John's 5695 for the 2021 year, he claimed the $2,000 of energy efficient improvements on his 5695, and the credit was $200, right? Because remember, under 25C, the credit amount is 10% of the cost of the improvements, and then it's capped at $500, right, for this particular type of improvement. Obviously, there were some other unique exceptions where certain things have different credit limits, but for the installation, there really was no cap on installation itself. It was just 10% of the cost and then a $500 lifetime credit. So if we look at John's 2021 return, this is the 5695 for 2021. Again, we're in part two, the non-business energy credit. And so we can see here on line 19A that John made $2,000 worth of qualified energy efficiency improvements, right? We're in line 19, and A is for insulation materials, right? So the $2,000 was reported there. The amount of credit on line 21 is $200, so 10% of the improvement. And then down here on line 25, we have the maximum credit amount. Remember, $500 is the cap for 2022 and prior for these types of improvements. So he has $200 credit, $500 lifetime cap. He hasn't used any of these types of credits in the past, right? So if he had, we would see an entry up here on line 18, right? The amount of lifetime credit that's been used up until this point, which is 0 because he hasn't claimed any energy efficient improvements in the past. So we've just got his $200 there. The credit is still $5. And so he is able to take a non-business energy property credit of $200, right? And so that's the credit that he gets on his tax return. Now, the reason why this is important, because remember, it's a $500 lifetime credit. So going forward, John has to track how much he's used, because once he hits the $500 mark, he can't take the credit in excess of that. And so that's where we get to his 2021 tax return. So let me go back, look at the fact pattern here. So during 2022, so new tax year, this is the current tax year, John replaced all the exterior doors in his principal residence. All the doors meet that Energy Star certification, so they're going to qualify for the credit. The total cost of all the doors is $3,600. Now, John is going to be able to claim the total $3,600 for 2022 because there is no per door limit for 2022 and prior. There is going forward, right? So the IRA changed the rules, and now it says that, well, it doesn't really matter how much you spend on the door. The credit that is going to be capped on a per door basis at $250. Doesn't apply to us here, so we don't really have to worry about it because it's just 2022. But we still need to be mindful of that $500 lifetime credit cap. So if I go back to part 2 of the 5695, this is for the 2022 tax year. Right, we can see here on line 18, this is kind of our starting point, right? The lifetime limitation credit. This is asking us, and if you look at the form instructions, there is this lifetime limitation worksheet. Effectively, all it's doing is it's asking you to go back through all of your prior year 5695s and add up every amount on line 30. So add up all the line 30 amounts, and that will give you what your lifetime limitation is, so what you've already used. All right, so that's the $200 that he's used before. So now we go down to line 19B, right? So 19B, he's reporting the $3,600 of exterior doors, the cost of the doors that were in the improvements to his personal residence. And then so down here on line 20, we have the total. Line 21, multiply that by 10%. There's our $360 credit. Now, notice what has to happen here. He's got a $360 credit available for the current year, but we need to factor in, right, how much of this energy efficient credit have we claimed in prior periods, right? And so this is where the reconciliation comes down here. So we've got the $360, the maximum credit amount, remember, it's $500, but the amount from line 18, right, the $200 figure there, reduces the amount of his available credit remaining. So if we've got the $500 minus $200, because that's what's already been used, we have $300 left over, right? So $300 is left over that we can claim, and what we have here is a limit, right? So even though $360 is basically the eligible credit, we can't take more than $300 because that's all we have left. So when John completes this return, $300 is going to be the last remaining piece of the credit he can claim. And so that's the amount reported on Schedule 3 of his tax return, and then ultimately the credit that he gets on his Form 1040. So if I scroll up here to Schedule 3, right, additional credits and payments, here's the amount for residential energy credits, right, attached to 5695. And then we scroll up here and we can see the credit posted there on line 20, right? So his total taxes owed based on his income, $86.25, a $300 credit. Net taxes owed, $83.25, and so that's going to obviously impact his refund. So So that covers it for this video. I hope that was helpful. Again, this is just a very, very limited scope of the residential energy credits. I will do a bunch of other videos on this topic as well. Just check the playlist below, the link below in the description, as I just add these as I get them posted. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment below. Happy to answer any questions I can. And of course, as always, I look forward to seeing you again on the next video. Thanks.